Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, we are from group 5 and our topic is about teaching grammar and vocabulary. So the members of this group are Anggia Najariana Wamahdini, Anissa Salsabila, Azmi Azizah, Elizabeth, Jaujana Jamulya, and I, Maulida Latifah. So for the first material will be explained by Anissa Salsabila. Anissa Salsabila, the time is yours.
All right, thank you, moderator, for the opportunity. The first topic that will be explained is about three dimensions of grammar. Three dimension of grammar is in order to help language learners use language directly, meaningfully, and appropriately, we need to explain the three interconnected and non-hereditary dimension of grammar. Maksudnya, agar membantu student atau learner agar menggunakan bahasa yang akurat, bermakna, dan tepat, kita perlu menjelaskan tiga dimensi grammar yang saling berhubungan ini. The first is the form dimensions. The form dimension refers to observable structural components such as phonemes, verb forms, inflectional morphemes, and syntactic patterns. Maksudnya adalah dimensi form atau bentuk dari kata tersebut. Dimensi ini mengacu pada komponen struktural seperti phoneme, verb forms, inflectional morphemes, and syntactic patterns. The second is meaning. Meaning refers to the semantic level of the structural items, including lexical and grammatical meaning. Di sini maksudnya dimensi meaning atau makna atau arti mengacu pada tingkat semantik struktural termasuk leksikal dan gramatikal. And the last is the use dimension. The use dimension accounts for meanings of utterance across different contexts and cohesion in discourse. Maksudnya adalah dimensi use atau penggunaan menjelaskan makna dari ujaran tersebut di seluruh konteksnya yang berbeda. Seluruh konteks yang berbeda. Let's look to the example. The example is that is enough. That is enough. Dari segi form atau bentuk, the utterance consists of three single morphemes. That, is, and enough. And where the verb be is inflector for the third person singular is. Jadi dari that is enough ini verbnya adalah is yang merujukan pada kata orang ketiga. I'm sorry. And in the meaning dimension, untuk dimensi makna, that is a demonstrative pronoun referring to a preceding word. Ika pula is has the meaning of having a particular state or quality and shows the relationship between that and enough. The third word in the utterance enough is an adjective in the predicate position meaning sufficient. Jadi dalam dimensi makna, kata ganti petunjuk itu mengacu pada kata sebelumnya, yaitu that, berarti ada petunjuk sebelum kata that is enough. Lalu kata ketiga dalam kalimat ini adalah enough, yang merupakan kata sifat predikat yang berarti memadai atau cukup. And in the use dimension, the social function can vary depending on the tone used and what the antecedent of that is in the large discourse. Jadi untuk penggunaan dari dimensi penggunaan that is enough ini dapat bervariasi tergantung pada nada yang digunakan dan konteks apa yang sedang dibicarakan. Misalnya, if a parent wants to reprimand a crying child, yelling "that is enough" is a command for the child to be quiet. Jadi misalnya ada orang tua yang menegur anak yang sedang menangis, lalu berteriak, "That's enough," berarti perintah agar anaknya diam. Lalu contoh keduanya, if a waiter is filling your water glass, then you say, "That's enough." Signals that you have a sufficient amount to drink and want him to stop pouring more water. Jadi perbedaan makna dari that's enough yang kedua adalah jika seorang pelayan sedang mengisi gelas air Anda, lalu Anda berkata, "That's enough," menandakan bahwa Anda sudah memiliki jumlah yang cukup untuk diminum dan ingin dia berhenti menuangkan lebih banyak air. And that's the example of the use dimension. The three dimensions are interconnected in the sense that a change in one dimension could change the other two. In the example above, that is enough whether the form is contracted and how each word is pronounced will affect the meaning. In a classroom of 40 students, emphasizing each individual word to bring the class to order will be very different than the contracted from that's enough when notifying the person pouring water that you have enough in glass. Traditionally, language teaching methodology has focused on one dimension while ignoring others. The grammar translation method and the audiolingual method focus on form, somewhat on meaning, but ignore use almost completely. Jadi, language teaching methodology ini biasanya hanya berfokus pada satu dimensi dan melupakan yang lainnya. The grammar translation method dan audiolingual method hanya fokus pada formnya saja, bentuknya saja. Terkadang kepada meaningnya juga, tapi melupakan dimensi the use dimension, almost ignore about the use dimension. And the natural approach, on the other hand, focus on use and meaning, but mostly ignores the form dimension. Jadi, kalaunya the natural approach, biasanya fokusnya kepada penggunaan dan meaning, tapi melupakan the form dimension. The learners of any language must learn all three of these components. Grammar is not only about form, it is about what forms mean and when and why they are used. And the second topic is grammar and discourse. Form, meaning, and use of language are context-sensitive and are co-constructed by the members of a particular discourse. Therefore, teaching language through discourse is inevitable. Salsa-Mercia and Osteen define discourse as an instant of spoken or written language with describable internal relationship, form, and meaning that relate coherently to an external communicative function or purpose in a given audience or interlocutor in a particular context. Jadi, Salsa-Mercia and Osteen Salsa-Mercia and Osteen mendefinisikan discourse sebagai sebuah contoh dari bahasa lisan atau tulisan dengan hubungan internal yang dapat digambarkan dari bentuk dan makna yang berhubungan secara koheren dengan fungsi atau tujuan komunikatif atau lawan bicara tertentu. In other words, maksudnya adalah konteks menentukan cara kita menggunakan bahasa, dan we need to take into account such factor. Jadi kita perlu mempertimbangkan faktor-faktor seperti who the speaker is, who the audience is, where the communication takes place, what communication takes place before and after a sentence in question, implied versus literal meanings, styles and register, and the alternative forms among which producer can choose. And the last topic is emergent grammar. According to Hopper, the patterns of language emerge through repeated use and become sedimented as fixed or semi-fixed patterns that may look stabilized. From this perspective, grammar is not the search for understanding and communication, but a byproduct of it. Hopper argued that grammar is a real-time activity whose regularities are always provisional and continuously subject to negotiation, revision, and abandon. Secara singkat, maksudnya adalah grammar ini bukan sebagai sumber pemahaman dan komunikasi, tapi hanya produk sampingan. Dan grammar ini adalah aktivitas waktu yang nyata yang sementara dan selalu berubah seiring waktu. Contohnya, originally, the proper noun Google was used to refer to the online search engine and now also function as a verb to means to look up information online. Contohnya seperti ini, kata Google dulu itu adalah sebuah kata benda yang merujuk kepada online search engine, tapi sekarang juga berfungsi sebagai kata kerja yang bermakna mencari informasi secara online. Dan you often hear people saying, "Why don't you Google the word? So we know what that is." To capture the dynamic, complex, and adaptive nature of language, Larson Freeman proposed the term grammaring, which shifts the focus from the product of learning static grammar rules to the process of mirroring helps us move away from the usual tradition of teaching grammar as a body knowledge and instead treats grammar as a skill developed. Jadi, untuk bisa menangkap sifat bahasa yang dinamis, kompleks, dan cepat berubah-ubah ini, Larson Freeman mengusulkan untuk Grammarkan ini mengalih fokus dari produk pembelajaran yang statis sebagai yang awalnya sebagai kumpulan pengetahuan dan menjadi memperlakukan grammar sebagai keterampilan yang bisa dikembangkan. That's all from me. I give it back to the moderator. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Elizabeth, and I'd like to explain about approaches to form-focused instruction. According to R. Ellis 2012, form-focused instruction or FFI is any planned or incidental instructional activity that is intended to induce language learners to pay attention to linguistic form. FFI approaches vary from traditional structure-based focusing primarily on form to more communicative approaches with attention to form while students are engaged in activities that are meaning-focused. Current views of second language classroom methodology are almost universally agreed on the importance of some form-focused instruction within the communicative framework, ranging from explicit treatment of rules to noticing and input enhancement to implicit techniques for structuring input to learners. This consensus, of course, still leaves open a wide range of options from which you must choose, depending on your students, their purposes, and the context. In other words, we need to consider an informed eclectic approach to form-focused instruction. The first form is explicit presentation of forms. According to Ellis 2014, explicit instruction attempts to help learners develop metalinguistic awareness of a rule that can be carried out deductively or inductively. As I said before, there are two types of explicit presentation of forms, deductive and inductive. In deductive explicit presentation, the teacher announcing the grammar focus, then the teacher write the examples of the target structure of show a grammar chart, and next the teacher follow up with an explicit explanation of the rule in detail, including the form, meaning, and use. And for inductive explicit presentation, teacher elicit information from the students by presenting example sentences, sometimes by using input enhancement techniques such as consciousness phrasing. So what is the difference between deductive explicit presentation and inductive explicit presentation? Di deductive, gurunya secara aktif dari memberitahukan apa yang akan dipelajari, memberikan contoh, kemudian juga memberikan penjelasan tentang form dari tata bahasa yang dipelajari dan juga bagaimana penggunaannya. Sedangkan pada induktif, guru memberikan contoh dan guru akan meminta umpan balik atau feedback dari siswanya. Setelah mereka melihat contoh-contoh yang diberikan gurunya, maka guru akan menanyakan kepada siswa bagaimana formnya, kemudian bagaimana penggunaan tata bahasa yang telah dipelajari berdasarkan contoh-contoh yang telah diberikan oleh gurunya. And in addition to deduction and induction and deduction, abduction can be another approach to obtaining linguistic knowledge. Introduced by C.S. Peirce at the end of 19th century, abduction refers to the exploratory process of trying out tentative solutions to problems or facts to figure out what may happen, to see if they work, or to experience something new. Language teachers can start with abduction, taking experiential and exploratory approaches, for example, puzzle-based learning, and then move on to either inductive or deductive tasks as relevant, followed with further exploration at a wider or deeper level. And this is how abduction works in the second language classroom. So the first step is teacher choose an authentic text that incorporates some features that the teacher wants to highlight, and then teacher design an activity that focuses on these features. The third step, students work in groups and note the grammatical features or patterns they observe, and students report their findings to the class. For the expansion, for inductive form, students collect further examples illustrating the patterns found and formulate a general rule. While in deductive form, teacher and students formulate a rule, check it in a grammar book, and look at examples that illustrate the rule. And the second form is implicit presentation of forms. In an implicit approach to grammar instruction, the target form is used in the utterance made to communicate with the students. The context of the utterances helps them to understand the meaning and sustain the communication. Jadi kalau di eksplisit tadi masih ada penjelasan dari gurunya, ada juga feedback dari siswanya yang menyebutkan bagaimana form dari grammar yang dipelajari dan juga bagaimana penggunaannya. Pada form implisit ini lebih menekankan contoh. Dan contoh yang digunakan biasanya ini menekankan pada aktivitas di kelas atau kehidupan sehari-hari dari guru dan siswanya. Dan dalam implisit ini biasanya lebih menekankan pada contoh, tidak terlalu menekankan pada bagaimana formnya, bagaimana penggunaannya, dijelaskan di kelas, tetapi siswa secara sadar belajar secara langsung dari contoh-contoh yang telah diberikan gurunya. Misalnya saja apa yang menggunakan aktivitas sekarang yang di kelas, maka siswa akan menyadari, oh ternyata untuk grammar yang ini digunakan untuk saat ini, grammar yang lain digunakan untuk di saat yang berbeda. Jadi di sini lebih menekankan pada contoh, belajar dari contoh, dan menyadari penggunaan ataupun formnya secara langsung dari contohnya tanpa ada penjelasan ataupun pertanyaan umpan balik dari gurunya. Demikian yang dapat saya sampaikan. That's all. Thank you.
All right, so I will explain about focus on forum. A focus on forum or FONF approach attempts to induce learners incidental learning by drawing their attention to target forms while they are engaged in communicative activities. The emphasis is on the learners noticing their knowledge about grammatical features, which is necessary for successful target language use and has been influential in task-based approaches to grammar instructions. Noticing refers to the process of the learner picking out specific features of the target language input which she or he hears or reads and paying conscious attention to them so that they can be fed into the learning process. A phonic approach can be considered more appropriate because number one, it is more in keeping with natural language acquisition, where rules are absorbed subconsciously with little or no conscious focus. Number two, it conforms more easily to the concept of interlanguage development in which learners progress on variable timetables through stage of rule acquisition. Number three, it allows students to get a communicative feel for more aspects of language before possibly being overwhelmed by grammatical explanation. And then the last number four, it builds more intrinsic motivation by allowing students to discover rules rather than being taught them. Phonics usually occurs actively when difficulties of the learner's performance are identified after or during the completion of a given task in which students use in grammatical knowledge available to them rather than particular grammatical point pre-selected and pre-presented by the teacher. Next is feedback on errors. Existing research on corrective feedback supports the importance of feedback for successful acquisition of oral communicative competence. The practical question is determining which specific type of error correction is most beneficial and under what circumstances the answer to which is unclear and has not been resolved. Therefore, it is desirable to employ a variety of feedback options such as recasting, self-correction, and metalinguistic explanation. The treatment of grammatical and discourse errors in writing is a different matter in process writing approaches. Over-attention to local grammatical and rhetorical discourse errors is normally delayed until learners have completed one or two drafts of paper. Jaffray and Lantoff, 1994, developed a 12-point regulatory scale ranging from implicit to explicit strategies for writing tutoring session. As you can see in the screen, this table describes a range of corrective feedback strategies differing in their degree of explicitness with different degrees of scaffolding. A teacher begins by asking students to identify errors in their own writing and then gradually move to offering concrete example of the correct sentence if the student fail to correct the errors by themselves. The goal here is to achieve self-regulation through the learner's self-correction. And next is a lexicogrammatical approach. The term lexicogrammar originally coined by Michael A. Halliday represent a view that lexis and grammar are two inherently connected parts of a single entity and should not be treated separately. Grammar is considered as a meaning-making resource and to describe grammatical categories by reference of what they mean. From this view, a grammatical structure may be lexically bound and lexical items also have grammatical features. This approach has been supported by corpus research, which illustrates strong connection between contextual patterns. So this is the sample activity was used in Liu and Jiang study 2009 in composition classes at an American university to help students recognize lexicogrammatical errors in their writing. So in the sample worksheet, the target linguistic forms were the use of proposition to in contribute to and the difference between present and past participles used as adjectives as in bored and boring and interested and interesting. The worksheet shows that the students was able to address the problem successfully using the corpus information. I think that's all from me. The next material will be explained by my friend. Thank you.
All right, so the next material is principles for teaching grammar. In teaching grammar, there are some various techniques that can be applied, but we can say that there are some considerable basic principles in teaching grammar. So the first principle is emphasizing all three dimensions of grammar, yaitu form atau bentuk kalimatnya, meaning yang maknanya, dan juga use atau kegunaan dari form tersebut. And second, take lexicogrammatical approach, especially when presenting new linguistic items to students. Well, kita bisa memanfaatkan korpus data berupa serangkaian contoh, misalnya kalimat past tense. Kita beri siswa sebagai contoh kalimat berbentuk past tense, contoh-contoh kalimat, sehingga mereka bisa mengenali dan terbiasa dengan pola-pola kalimat tersebut. And the next, practice and use forms in communicative tasks. Berilah kesempatan kepada siswa untuk melatih dan menggunakan grammatical form yang telah mereka pelajari untuk berkomunikasi secara langsung. And next, menghadirkan pembelajaran berbasis input and output. Input tadi berupa pembagian materi dan contoh kalimat, sedangkan outputnya itu bisa berupa komunikasi, entah lisan ataupun tulisan. Jadi, dalam memberikan pembelajaran grammar, kedua hal tadi harus ada, jangan salah satu aja. And the next, the use of deductive, inductive, and abductive approaches can all be useful. Tentunya, yang harus disesuaikan dengan tujuan pembelajaran dan keperluan atau kemampuan siswanya. And then we have incidental focus on form is valuable to treat error. Ingat bahwa dalam pembelajaran itu baiknya selalu ada meaningful communication. Jadi daripada terus-menerus berbicara tentang form, terus-terusan cuma mengkoreksi, lebih baik formnya itu dibahas dalam waktu yang tepat dan dengan bahasa yang lebih bermakna. And then we have implicit and explicit corrective feedback. As we know, corrective feedback can be given implicitly or explicitly. And tentunya itu akan sangat berguna untuk memperbaiki kesalahan-kesalahan yang dibuat oleh siswa. Then, implicit and explicit grammar lesson integrated to communicative activities. Selain koreksi secara eksplisit dan implisit, pembelajaran juga yang didasarkan pada aktivitas komunikasi juga bisa bersifat eksplisit dan implisit. Yang secara eksplisit itu bisa berupa penjelasan materi secara rinci, sedangkan yang implisit melalui kegiatan seperti membaca teks dialog, mendengarkan, dan sebagainya. Kemudian, yang instruction need to consider learners' individual differences. Well, sebagaimana yang kita tahu, para siswa yang kita hadapi pastinya memiliki tingkat pemahaman dan kemampuan yang beragam. Kita harus mencoba berbagai aktivitas yang sekiranya sesuai dan paling cocok untuk kebutuhan siswa tersebut. And then in the next slide, we have grammar techniques. There are some examples of techniques that can be applied to help learners notice and pay attention to the grammatical features being delivered. So, number one, use charts, objects, maps, and drawings. A chart is useful for students to check off certain forms. Contohnya ini pada saat kita di sekolah dulu, belajar tentang pronouns beserta variasinya. Biasanya informasi tersebut disajikan dalam bentuk tabel, sehingga bisa memudahkan kita untuk melihat perbedaan-perbedaan dan perubahan-perubahannya. And then, object and illustration bisa mempermudah siswa memahami topik dari sebuah teks. And there's also maps that can be useful in material about direction. Seperti di sekolah dulu kita diberi denah, lalu disuruh untuk menjelaskan lokasi dari suatu tempat. And then, number 2, we have dialogues and conversation. For a long time, dialogues have been successfully used to focus learners on form and meaning simultaneously. Ingat aja dulu di sekolah, di mana-mana ada dialog. For beginners, they provide models for practice, help them understand the meaning and relate it to the real context. Sedangkan untuk intermediate learner, dialogues and our conversation give learners a chance to confidently produce language and use their own creative addition. Jadi kalau untuk intermediate learners, itu mereka akan bisa menggunakan bahasa mereka sendiri tanpa terpaku pada contoh dari conversation yang ada. And next, we have input enhancement. This technique involves highlighting or bold-facing certain target grammatical forms in reading text or stressing certain forms or slowing down using hand gestures when speaking. You can see the example in our textbook, halaman 494. Kalau dihitung dari sampulnya, the target form di sana itu tertulis dalam bentuk bold. And next, ada input flow. Speakers tend to produce a previous spoken or heard structure. So, by using repetition of form in a text, it will help the students to get used to the form. Contohnya ada di textbook halaman 495. Nah, misalnya mengajar materi tentang past tense. Di dalam teks tersebut kita melihat ada bentuk kalimat past tense yang muncul di kalimat pertama, kedua, dan seterusnya. Diulang-ulang sehingga para siswa yang baca itu bisa, ya, bentuknya begini, mereka bisa mengenalinya sendiri. And next, ada input processing. Nah, ketika dua input yang sudah dijelaskan tadi cenderung hanya berfokus kepada formnya, dan siswa biasanya kesulitan untuk mengaitkan antara form dengan makna dan fungsinya sekaligus, maka dibuatlah teknik yang berfokus pada pengenalan terhadap fungsi dan makna sebuah kalimat. Contoh kegiatan yang bisa dilakukan adalah dengan memberikan serangkaian kalimat terdiri dari dua macam form, anggaplah past tense sama present tense, lalu kemudian siswa diajak untuk menentukan yang mana sih yang kalimatnya itu sedang berlangsung, yang mana yang sudah terjadi. Jadi disuruh memaknai kalimat-kalimat yang disajikan. Terakhir ada dictogloss. Dictogloss is a task-based procedure designed to help auto learners internalize certain grammatical elements that are built into a text. Nah, contoh kegiatan yang bisa dilakukan dimulai dari tahap persiapan dan pemanasan dengan cara diskusi dan pengenalan topik dari suatu teks yang akan dibahas. Kemudian, dilanjutkan dengan tahap membaca teks dan penulisan poin-poin penting dari teks yang telah dibaca tadi. Nah, setelah hal itu dilakukan, maka dilanjutkan dengan proses rekonstruksi di mana siswa berbekal dari hasil bacaan dan hasil catatan kecilnya tadi diminta untuk mencatat sebuah teks, menulis sebuah teks semirip mungkin dengan teks original yang telah mereka baca. Kemudian di tahap akhir ada analisis dan koreksi bersama-sama. So, that's all from me about grammar teaching principles and techniques. The next material will be delivered by Anggi. To Anggi, please, the time is yours.
All right, thank you, Naji, for the opportunities. The next material is teaching vocabulary. Vocabulary is something that we continue to learn and develop throughout our entire lives, or an unconstrained skill. If you guys don't know about what is unconstrained skill, so unconstrained skill refer to growth in meaning-based skills such as oral language, vocabulary, comprehension, composition, and critical thinking skills. Jadi semakin banyak kosakata yang mereka kuasai, maka semakin mudah bagi mereka untuk memahami suatu teks. And that's why effective vocabulary teaching is so important.
Teaching vocabulary is about context and repetition. Maksudnya adalah apa yang mereka perlu ketahui tentang kosakata, kosakata yang mereka gunakan, dan penggunaan kosakata tersebut secara berulang. The next is historical perspective about teaching vocabulary. According to Zimmerman, 1997, while traditional language teaching methods highlighted vocabulary study with lists, definitions, written and oral drills, and flashcards, there was also a period of time when the teaching and learning of vocabulary were undervalued. Further, as teachers increasingly perceived their role as facilitators and guides, they became more reluctant to take the directive and sometimes intrusive steps to turn students' focus to lexical forms. A further development in vocabulary teaching is the rapid growth of corpus linguistics and the volumes of raw data that are now available in corpora that encompass spoken and written language, genders of each, as well as data from a number of the varieties of world English. Current practices in teaching vocabulary, especially in view of the technology of corpus linguistics, are clearly not simple rebirth of the same methods of a half century ago. Rather than viewing vocabulary items as a long and boring list of words to be defined and memorized, lexical forms are seen in their central role in contextualized, meaningful language. Learners can be guided in specific ways to internalize these important building blocks of language. There are some guidelines for the communicative treatment of vocabulary instruction. The first one is allocate specific class time to vocabulary learning. Web Nation 2013 note that at least somewhere between 7 to 16 encounters of any new word are required for gaining necessary knowledge. In the interactive classroom, sometimes we get so caught up in lively group work and meaningful communication that we don't pause to devote some attention to words. Noting the incremental nature of word learning according to Zimmerman 2014, it is important to have students meet target words several times. Furthermore, the spacing between the repetitions is also important to keep in mind. For example, spreading 20 minutes across a few days at progressive intervals will be much more effective for long-term recall than spending 20 minutes all at once. I think that's all from me. The next explanations will be continued by my friend Maulida Latifah. To Maulida, the time is yours.
All right, thank you, Anggi. So I will continue the material from Anggi's explanation. The second of strategies of teaching vocabulary is help students to learn vocabulary in context. The best internalization of vocabulary comes from encounters with words within in context of surrounding discourse. Data from linguistic corpora can provide real-world actual language that has been printed or spoken. Rather than isolating words or focusing on dictionary definition, learners can benefit from attending to vocabulary within a communicative framework in which items appear. Students will then associate new words with a meaningful context to which they apply. For example, for a beginning level of students, pictures, realia, and gesture can be used to describe meaning in context. For a more advanced level of students, encourage them to consult online corpora, for example, like British National Corpus or the Corpus of Contemporary American English, COCA. To gain knowledge of pattern sequences, particularly collocation or words that go together. Next slide, please. The third is engage in unplanned vocabulary teaching. In all likelihood, most of the attention you give to vocabulary learning will be unplanned. Those moments when a student asks about a word or when a word has appeared that you feel deserve some attention. These impromptu moments are very important. Sometimes they are simply brief little pointers, and sometimes such impromptu moments may be extended. The teacher gives several examples and encourages students to use the word in other sentences. Make sure that such unplanned teaching, however, doesn't detract from the central focus of activity by drifting into a long and possibly irrelevant tangent. So the last is encourage students to develop word learning strategies. An effective way to encourage word learning is to urge students to use vocabulary notebooks to enter new words and to review them daily. Once they identify their learning goals, so studies show that in order to understand television shows, learners need to know about 300 word families and have knowledge of proper nouns. And if they wish to read novels and newspapers comfortably, they need to have a vocabulary size of 8,000 to 9,000 word families. The fact that increasing vocabulary says will influence the degree to which they can understand and use language may motivate them to be determined to expand their vocabulary notebooks. So considering that only a small fraction of the word list can be covered inside the classroom, it is necessary for students to develop effective strategies for learning vocabulary on their own. Word learning strategies refer to the planned approaches that a word learner takes as an agent of his or her own word learning. Next slide. I think that's all from our presentation. If you have any question, please to ask us in Telegram group. Thank you for watching our presentation video. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.